Over to you, Paresh, sir.
Hello and welcome to another episode of In Conversation With. In Conversation With is a part of the CASI New York Knowledge Series, where we invite senior management practitioners from around the world and discuss with them, debate with them, ask them a lot of questions on sustainability and related activities. The entire exercise is dual. One, to reach out to senior practitioners from across the world, create a platform where they can interact with each other, we learn. And two, for the millions of students at CASI, we are trying to find out executable advice. So we are in search of executable advice. And who better than these management practitioners who have been practicing sustainability across different fields? So today we have a very impressive panel. One of our panelists, Anna, runs a podcast on her own. So she has the answers for us today. And she also has the right questions for the guests. Ripudaman heads CSR at a large company. Parthasarathi works for AkzoNobel, one of the leading companies. So today we have a very interesting panel. Today, incidentally, we also have a star-studded audience. Most of the audience I know personally. Haddon is a very senior resource. Patrick is a close friend. He works on sustainability. Francis works on ESG. So yes, this is a star-studded panel and a star-studded audience. So the entire episode is going to be what's your angle. We understand sustainability, we understand CSR, we understand last mile fulfillment, foundations. It's very common. A lot of people are practicing, a lot of people are working on this, but everybody has an angle. What's your angle is the theme of today evening. So let's start with Anna. Anna, what is your angle on sustainability?
Tough question. When you say sustainability, and again, you mentioned my podcast, the name of the podcast is Sustainability Explored. I really wanted to understand sustainability as a whole, and this is how I started to invite guests to tell me what sustainability means in their industries in terms of their business operations. The classical term, the classical meaning of sustainability is wrapped around three pillars: people, planet, and some say profit, but the more correct third pillar would be prosperity. So 3P, the third one being prosperity. So for me, it's really the intersection of these three components. You can also say social, environmental, and economical components playing all together in balance and in harmony.
Mm-hmm. So, let's move on to Ripudaman. Ripudaman, could you please tell us what's your angle on sustainability?
So for me, sustainability is more of finding solutions to a problem, which of course not only which has an immediate impact, but also to sustain that impact for future, and see how that impact is, of course, is in the positive side. And for sustainability, for me, it's not so. No doubt, I've worked my entire career experiences working towards the communities, but I feel as a whole, as an environment, as a human, sustainability not just restricts towards CSR, but it kind of has a broader umbrella as a human, how we are contributing to the environment, how we are ensuring that we're taking sustainable measures in our day-to-day life problems as well. So that's my take on sustainability.
Mm-hmm. Parthasarathi, I would like to ask you a different question. See, Anna is a consultant for ESG and manufacturing for large corporates. You work for a company. So
Right.
while it is one thing to give advice, it is quite another to follow advice. Yeah,
Right.
because the cost goes up. So every time we look at ESG or anything in between, there's a cost. There's a cost to it. And there is a short-term
Absolutely.
cost to it. So on the 31st
Right.
of March, when you release a balance sheet, there is going to be an effect. So there is a long-term,
Absolutely.
short-term, constant pull and push between the long-term and the short-term. So
Right.
how does AkzoNobel look at it?
So, I would say, we just look at the sustainability angle as a way we do business. It's not we do separately. I think given the legacy of our company, we are a 400-year-old company. founded by Sir Alfred Nobel himself. So I think, and I've been working in this company for the 6 years, and I've worked with a couple of MNCs beforehand also. But in AkzoNobel, the best part of it is that we never have seen sustainability as a separate angle. It's like we were the first companies to stop the use of lead in paints way back in 90s. When which was not also a issue, especially in India. So I think right from the amount of energy we use in our plants, to the amount of water we recycle, and the minded we have very long-term targets. It's not like a 1 year, 2 year long targets. Like we have long-term plans for it. What we are planning to do is that by 2030 we are planning to use our electricity, like we are planning to have 50% of our plants run by renewable energy, right? So we have very long term targets, and the best part is that I've always find in this company that we don't see sustainability as a separate pillar, but it's just the way we do business, and that is why we have never seen that angle that we need to put an additional cost to it. The company has always been forthcoming in this.
Mhm. So how do you inculcate sustainability within the supply chain? I understand AkzoNobel is a very, very large company. You have business operations and marketing operations around the world. How do you inculcate this sustainability feeling in the supply chain?
So, to be very honest, I am not the right person to answer about it, because I primarily focus on CSR rather than sustainability in India. And so,
Oh, very nice. So let me
yeah,
ask you about a CSR question then.
right, right,
See, when we started CASI, we were more of sustainability. But SACI did not sound very nice. So we named the company CASI. Yeah.
right,
So, originally we were called CSR and Sustainability Institute. Now we are called CASI New York, because originally we were only selling in New York, and now we are selling in 52 countries.
right,
So we call ourselves CASI New York. We have 1 million students in India. We have a pretty large presence in India, and
right,
in India it is more of CSR.
right,
In Asia it is more of CSR.
right,
In Europe and in US it is more of sustainability for us. So
right.
let me ask you a CSR question. With all these talks about sustainability, ESG reporting, and everything going on, where does CSR fit in, or do you take CSR separately, or does it fit in the ESG culture? What is your take on that?
I think, as you rightly pointed out, like, sustainability is still, more of I see is a Western concept, that especially in the companies who have been present in US, or, based out of, European companies, sustainability is a separate topic. But in India, I still find, still there is a tussle going on between CSI and sustainability. But actually, I see CSI is just a part of the sustainability, and just the way, we do the business. So I think in India currently, CSI is still the, and the reason for this is that when I went to do a course in Europe, I found that people were really surprised that when I talked about what we do in our company, like we talked about education or community health or livelihood training, they were quite surprised that why a corporate need to do it, and why not the government is doing it, right? So but then I had to tell them that uh, things are very different in India or in Asia. So if we just leave it to the government, so we don't know when we are going to achieve it. So as a corporate also, like apart from the environmental and the other responsibility we have also a large responsibility towards the society, and there are two angles to it. So of course it's just you want to ensure a thriving community, thriving society, and you also want to ensure that especially in the difficult regions, in the difficult corners of the country, you want to have a social license to operate, which is equally very important. I think in the last 5-10 years, many such issues have come to India to haunt corporates, and because probably the right way the social license to operate was not taken, or the CSI was not just started from the scratch, right? So I think it's a very important part of the sustainability, especially in India.
Mhm. Okay, I agree to your point partially. Let me give you my opinion on the government,
Right,
because I've been on many debates globally on why should the government not be doing it,
right,
why should the corporates be doing it. So we'll get to that in a bit.
sure,
But I still have my question on supply chain sustainability. When let me reframe my question, and maybe Anna or Patrick can answer it. When you approach a company, and when a company board or the CEO is concerned, yeah, let's take a deeper look at sustainability. Are we damaging the environment? Are we not following ESG? Let's take a better look. And in a typical country like India, or even Poland, in Europe, sustainability is pretty new, or even Ukraine, sustainability is pretty new. So not all companies have their act in place. Yeah. So there are companies who are starting today. There are companies who started yesterday, and there are companies who may start tomorrow, on taking a deeper look in sustainability. So they typically call a consultant somebody who knows, sustainability, like Anna or our friend Patrick, and they say, okay, look, tell us what we are doing wrong, or tell us what to do. And they typically don't give you an year. They don't give you 12 months to find out what is wrong. They need to know a little, and then you make progress, and then you make progress. And typically things work like that in a corporate. You do not sign $100 million deal on day one. So they say, okay, let's spend $20,000. Let's try and understand where we are going, or where do we need to go, and then we take it one box at a time, and then you move on towards sustainability. Now, this may not happen for a company like AkzoNobel, because you are a multi-billion-dollar company. But for other large companies in other parts of the world, this is how it really works. So what my question is, when a company with a large supply chain approaches you, Anna or Patrick, and when they say, okay, what do we do? How do you start? How do you really start looking at the supply chain and say, okay, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, and this is where we should probably start, or this is the research that needs to be done. So how do you start?
It's such a complex question, but it's such a good question. I'm glad it gets asked right here, right now. First, I would like to agree a lot with the previous speaker, my colleague from India. And I do believe the businesses are the driving force of the economy. I certainly believe 100% more in civil society rather than in governments. Here in Ukraine, if you wait for the government to implement something, to change, you can wait ages and ages more. When people get together with their understanding of, okay, this is really not the way to do things in 2020 and further on, let's do something. And they get together. For example, now, literally today, they are banning the production of furs. So the firms, how do you call it, like where they grow animals in order to cut the fur from them, not for meat, but for the fur coats and so on. Society comes together and they push it to the government so that the government changes the law. Today we serve as a hotspot for the European market of the fur coats, for raw materials. This is the example of how it happens. Another thing is the reputational. This is slightly like going back to the previous speech, but I'm gonna get to the supply chain, speaking from the personal experience, corporate experience. Another thing is the reputation. I came across a study from, if I'm not mistaken, KPMG or something, one of the big four auditors. They say that 70% of millennials, that's basically everyone who is 30, approaching 30 or slightly over 30 today, 70% of these people pay attention to what the corporation or the organization or the company they're about to work in, how is their corporate sustainability doing? How is their corporate social responsibility? What do they do for the society, and so on? And you can already see young people coming to the job interview and asking questions to the recruiter while the recruiter is interrogating them. They're like, what do you do as a company? I want to know what you did for the country, for the city, for the society. What are the social kind of benefits that you provide? Not only on the individual level, but on the societal level. Speaking of the supply chains, a super complex question. I started to give you a little bit of my background. I graduated from a French university with a degree on applied environmental science. And I came back to Ukraine about 4 years ago and happened to start working for the first Ukrainian green bank. Back then, this bank was state-owned, and they wanted to sell part of the shares that belonged to the government of Ukraine on behalf of the Ministry of Finance to the external investor. And this is where the external need comes in. Very rarely the company or a bank, you name it, or the organization has the need for the CSR or realizes the need for the CSR, ESG, transparency, or what is my focus these days is building a solid and sound environmental and social management systems from within. When this needs comes from inside of the organization, it never happened to me, but that would mean a unicorn. That would mean that the top management really realizes that they're enhancing their reputation, they're cutting costs on material costs, they are expanding the horizons for everyone. Usually the need comes from the external source, and it's usually connected to money. So in our case at the bank, setting up the assessment, first of all, the assessment of our supply chain was one of those blocks that you say, where do you start? We certainly didn't start with a supply chain because it's super complex. What we did, we broke it down into material goods and services, and we kind of started to play with the checklist. What kind of questions can we ask our supplier of either goods or services in order to understand how they operate? Now, imagine a bank. What kind of services do you procure? Maybe translation, maybe external consultants, but very rarely, even I was back then not an external consultant, but an employee. This is how the state-owned banks normally operate here in Ukraine. So basically we were stuck with translation and maybe some external lawyers, services procurement. And for the material goods, basically everything that you see in the office, furniture, stationery, but that's it. Maybe for the services, you would add also cleaning and repairing the air conditioners and so on. And this is where I started to understand, I think it was in summer, one day we actually had our AC broken in the office. And imagine a situation where an external person comes in and it needs to repair something outside of the window on the 4th floor. There is no security, there is no stripes that would hold him inside. Who bears the responsibility for his life? How did we let him in? We should know who is the company, where is his personal protective equipment, also known as PPE, and so on. So we take as a final consumer of these goods, as an organization, we take the final responsibility for this man's life. This was so bright and such a crazy example. I watched him with my mouth open. What's gonna happen next? I could just hope that this was not his first time, fixing the AC outside of the window, but it felt completely awkward and it felt deeply uncomfortable. I felt deeply uncomfortable. So what we did, we started to break down first into goods and services, and then in sending out the questionnaires to our suppliers. And that is as much as we could go. Unfortunately, back then, 4 or 3 years ago, we would send it. The first question was always, are you compliant with the local legislation? They would say yes, because not a single sustainability consultant in the organization would know all the possible tax codes, I don't know, health and safety, labor codes, and so on and so forth. We would ask them questions and simply rely on their goodwill and, you know, on their good word. That was it. But I know that bigger organizations, say you're a construction, this is another example from more current example from my work. We have a construction site. We state in every contract with every subcontractor that they will do everything possible. So they commit to employ local workforce where possible. So the division that we have from IFC, International Finance Corporation, is skilled, semi-skilled, and unskilled. Super skilled professionals are really hard to find, and they're really trained, well educated, and so on. So that company can solve by their own means. But semi-skilled or security or cleaning services, or someone dealing with social issues like HR or social performance manager, we really insist, and we write it in the contracts, that you sign hereby that you are committing to take local workforce and also to support local economy where possible, buy the materials, whatever it might be, concrete, sand, bricks, whatever, from the closest possible to the site. And this is how we can help the supply chain locally. This is my 5 cents on it. I know I'm taking too much time and might sound a little bit messy.
No, that was that was explained in the right way. Let's move to CSR for a bit, and then I come back to sustainability. The first question would be to Ripudaman. Post COVID, I talked to a lot of CSR heads, CSR managers, foundation heads, and they are all very busy nowadays. They are very busy. Never have they had so much pressure on the CSR budgets or the CSR people. So I understand that there is life is going to be different post COVID for most CSR heads. Ripudaman, could you tell us what are the top changes that we expect in the entire way CSR is done in this country, or in any country? There's a particular method of doing CSR, and there have been a lot of learnings in this COVID for all of us. So I guess changes are inevitable in the way we do CSR. So what are the top 2-3 changes that you expect?
So for example, from the experience which I had with my NGO partners working with, we also work with Nani Kali, which is the project of KC Mahindra Foundation. The major, with this COVID, we actually realized that how the importance of remote education is, that how it is very important these days, because we can't go on ground, people can't interact with each other. But no doubt the elite schools have followed the practices of giving the tablets to the kids. The people can buy the tablets or can have those kind of infrastructure. But what about the ground level beneficiaries? Where are they going to? How are they going to be supported? There needs to be extra funds which need to come. So for example, if a project was used to be managed in X amount, but with this overhead expenses of the infrastructure, the technology, the project cost gonna be increased, then how is the NGO partner or the corporate gonna sustain that cost? So for example, if some corporate has budgeted X amount for that particular project, has not incorporated that cost of infrastructure, additional cost. So I think it has actually asked us to think from a wider lens, that what is the future gonna be. We need to keep some buffer for in terms of the budget as well, so that we don't kind of get exhausted and we will not be able to reach to a state where we are not able to sustain that initiative of ours, or an NGO partner is not able to sustain that. So I feel that is one more. And second, of course, the awareness piece, like I'm telling again and again, I talk more about it. I feel that awareness is really, for this COVID also, the healthcare is, we like on the ground level, I felt from personal experience was People were not able to get the proper awareness about the disease. People were not aware about what is going to happen, what is not, what they are supposed to do, what they're not supposed to do. I feel we do a lot of implementation pieces in India. Okay, if there's a need of water conservation projects, let's do it. Let's build some wells around it and all. But what about the awareness piece? Where is that awareness piece where we are educating people how to use that resource in a nice way, in a sustainable way? I think for me, the second important point is that we should ensure that every project which has an implementing side should have a 50% or more than 50% of an awareness side as well. No doubt a lot of organizations do it, but there should be a lot more emphasis on that. So that's what I think are the two major things we should take into account. And of course, we're still learning with this new normal. So we'll be coming up with new strategies along with, and I'm sure that a lot of organizations have already moved from what you say is on ground project monitoring and evaluation to offline project and monitoring and evaluation. That is also very important because we need to trust each other, because we can't go and inspect a lot of projects which requires inspection. You can't go physically and do the inspection. So all these things, I think we need to think through while we are actually investing in certain project or while we are building a certain solution to an issue. So these are the points I think is really important post-COVID we need to focus upon.
We have had a very interesting speaker, last month. Arpinder is a partner in one of the big four. He's a very close friend, so and a very senior resource at a big four. So he was telling me, there are two things which CSR heads need to take care of. One is, because of COVID, CSR managers are not able to travel. So that there arises a cause of frauds. So, you trust an NGO, there's an NGO partner who says, okay, at ground level, this is happening. 6 months from now, post-COVID, you go and visit and nothing has happened. So, these are alarm bells at large corporates, and the big four is working on that. What is your opinion on that?
So that's what I said, that we need to figure out a ways for a remote monitoring and evaluations. We need to come up with certain solutions. Maybe technologically, we need to kind of advance CSR. Right now, I felt from my tenure now, more into, I don't think so CSR has been technologically equipped till date. There are a lot of organizations might be using it. A lot of IT firms have their own technologies to do the monitoring and evaluation. A lot of tools are coming up. But now I think it should be a kind of a need. Initially, it was a privilege to have that technology in a CSR, but going forward, there has to be a technology or a proper mechanism where you actually, by sitting at home, can understand what is the project health and ensure that there's no frauds being happening, the inspections are being done on time. So all these interventions need to come up.
So you're saying the use of technology will go up now by the CSR division?
I feel
so. So, Francis, that's a business case for you. I hope you're listening to this, and I hope you have a number, or I can maybe make the introductions. Coming back to you, Parthasarathi, tell us about your opinion. How is life going to change for the CSR people, the CSR heads, the NGOs in post-COVID situation? That there are learning. So what have been the learnings been?
I think COVID has changed everything, and there have been like everything, there's a positive side to it and negative side to it. Positive side, definitely the focus on community health have been suddenly been, there's a big push for the community health initiatives of many corporates which were not earlier working before. So there have been a lot of use of technology. For example, we were for the last 3 years, we have been doing a community telemedicine project in many of the locations, but then communities were not that much coming forth for telemedicine because, seeing a doctor in a phone or in a computer and then actually visiting a doctor are very different things. So suddenly, this COVID situation have accelerated it. So people's acceptance to technology has suddenly grown up. And even for health, you can say, you can talk about, skill training, you can talk about education, the way children, so nobody would have thought, a child will study on a WhatsApp. like, but then suddenly it become a reality, I'm talking about many towns and cities of India. But, if I see typically on the negative side, I think there have been also many knee-jerk reaction to this COVID situation, where certainly corporates have allocated large sum of money for COVID. That would have certainly, a deep impact on the projects they have been doing on other issues like education, skill development, water. And, a country like India, I think every need is an important need. So, the suddenly, I can see, like, when becoming the real of the, we are coming back to the real life, and, projects are slowly going back. So I see a lot of NGOs suddenly, it's a completely panic mode. The issues that there are many issues happening with FCRA, and with the corporates spending, giving away a lot of money to PM care funds, and, diverting the funds to, COVID situation. So, there is going to be a crisis, and already, see a lot of NGOs already in a panic mode, because, there have been a 30 to 40% cut in most of the corporate funding they used to get. And there are issues now with and, the smaller NGOs are the ones who are going to be the major sufferer, because in FCRA, if a big NGO, mother NGO gets a fund, he can't transfer it to a smaller NGO. And with the CSR money being cut, I think, people are there's going to be a deep impact in the development sector. In other areas apart from community health is one area I see, a lot of focus is coming, a lot of technology is coming. But in other locations, other development areas, be it a sanitation, be it education, be it skill training, I see, a big challenge coming up in the coming days.
Mhm. So tell me, and not from a personal point of view or your company point of view, because the answer would be difficult for you. Tell me from a general point of view, Parthasarathi. A lot of companies have different focuses in CSR. So for some it's education, for some it's health, for some it's something else, and then something else. Um, do you think companies will change their focus areas post-COVID?
Absolutely. Many, I can already seen many companies suddenly changing their focus, post-COVID, because, and, their questions are being asked in the board, like, even the senior management also saying that, do you think we need to focus more on health rather than other issues? So suddenly, there already, a change. I can see many corporates have already changed the focus areas. And it's a reality. So, but I think, there shouldn't be a sudden knee-jerk reaction. The management should spend some more time to think about it. And suddenly, there can be a reallocation, but suddenly taking a whole new decision, it won't be a very fair thing to do, because a lot of work have happened in the past. Generally CSR projects or development projects takes a long time to make an impact. So generally it's a 4 or 5 year long program. So suddenly if you stop a project after 1 or 2 years, so all the good work you have done in the past will go away. And suddenly the beneficiaries, who have been depending on you, so suddenly they are catch 22 situation. So yeah, that is what I feel.
Yeah, that brings an additional question for you. There's a very close friend of mine, Mangesh. He's the CEO for Swadesh Foundation.
Right.
He's a very, very smart guy. So he always is in disagreement with most CSR heads. He says that the only thing that I do is go to a village, make them sustainable, and my job is not to make them sustainable. My job is to get out of the village once I make them sustainable. So my job is only done when I get out of the village. Till the time I am in the village, my job is not done. So, he's necessarily of the opinion that you need to teach people how to fish. You cannot give them a fish. And you just mentioned that there are people depending on you. And if you get out of the project, then those people, they are filled with anguish or fear or remorse, whichever way it works for them. How do you handle this? What is your opinion? What happens at AkzoNobel?
Yeah, so if I talk about AkzoNobel, the good part is that we are mostly located in the bigger cities. Like we are not located inside the very rural areas where the community is completely dependent on us. From an AkzoNobel point of view, clearly we focus on our strength. We are being a paint and coating company. We have inbuilt knowledge of paint, so we focus primarily on skill training of youth in paints. So, and we primarily collaborate a lot with other corporates as well as government to ensure the costs are less, and we do on a sustainable model. But apart from AkzoNobel, I would say, like, there are many corporates we are located in the rural areas, and I have explained in my last organization I used to work in Vedanta, and in Vedanta, large amount of community, thousands of villages, are dependent on corporate. And
So you with
suddenly,
Vedanta Foundation or Vedanta the company?
I was part of K in India, so which is now part of Vedanta.
Okay, okay.
In India. So, so basically the biggest operations was also in Barmer, Rajasthan. And I can tell you the entire district was dependent on Vedanta and is still dependent on Vedanta. So, if you typically, to be very honest, I would say, sustainability is still a very fancy word to use and mostly used by academicians. If you really ask me that, do you think that, you can make projects sustainable and get away with it? It's not easy to do it in practice. It's in theory, it sounds good. And especially for a corporate where there are large expectations from the community, from the corporate, it's not an easy job to do. So, so again, I would say, like, it lot depends upon the type of industry you are in, the type of, the type of communities you are dealing with. For a company like AkzoNobel, it's very easy because primarily no community is as such dependent on us. We are primarily present in urban locations. But if I talk about a company like Vedanta, and you could certainly say that, will education be completely, be independent and let the villages be dependent on government? It's not going to happen. It's a very reality check, I would say.
Okay. So what are the focus areas at AkzoNobel again?
So, the flagship program is skill development of youth, where, we focus major of the things. Apart from education and community health, education for the children, where we work with the government schools to improve the quality of education. And for community health is primarily telemedicine project, we are focusing on.
Oh, very nice. So, I have a question for both the CSR people again, Ripudaman and Parthasarathi. A very large Indian company has taken special permission to use CSR funds to promote entrepreneurship.
Right.
It's a very large company, and I have worked with them as an investment banker, a couple of deals. So what is your opinion on whether we can use, whether we should use, or whether we are already using CSR funds to promote entrepreneurship? How does that happen? Ripudaman and Parthasarathi.
Should I start? So, entrepreneurship. So, I would say, like, again, I think, livelihood and entrepreneurship is something that, many corporates are already working, but it depends upon, exactly, who is the target group, right? So I think a lot of corporates are already focusing on entrepreneurship of women, especially in the rural locations for, micro enterprises or starting up handicapped, this thing. And they have been, I think, for many, many years, they have been happening. So this is, if you are talking that, would obviously, I think it's been doing a long time, and definitely micro enterprises need support from CSRs or corporates, to take it to the next level, because one of the areas I think they lack is that, promotion of them, handholding of them, and even capacity building of them. I think so definitely, there a lot of attention needs to be made. If you're referring for that, or entrepreneurship for, like, urban locations or specific target groups you're talking to.
No, I'm okay either ways. What is your opinion, Ripudaman? You are in a business where you need more and more entrepreneurs. JLL depends on entrepreneurs at a local level, to help you spearhead your sales across thousands of locations. You cannot probably afford to have your own staff across thousands of locations. So you depend on brokers, the broker network, local level entrepreneurs who reach out, and you being an ethical company. And by the way, congratulations on being an ethical company, 13th year in a row. Yeah. So, I'm sure you depend on local level entrepreneurs. So do you encourage entrepreneurship through your CSR funds?
So we encourage entrepreneurship, but we don't do market under CSR. We do it as a separate entity. We don't claim it as a CSR fund. We do promote it. We ensure there are vendor partners if they wanted to promote, want to come on board, and if they have to have that kind of the training materials or training facilities. So we ensure to give them, but we don't market under CSR. So that's why we do it. But like Parthasarathi said, that in terms of the the small enterprises which the women are taking care of, or the handicrafts which we are doing to, for the women empowerment. So of course they require at some level the CSR funds. But I think it depends on the project to project, which kind of project you want to fund, which kind of entrepreneurship project or focus area you want to promote. But I think a lot of corporates, even with my previous organization, we were supporting one of the enterprise of a group of females working in a community in Panvel near Mumbai. But that was also not marked as claimed as a CSR project, though we are spending amount, though we are investing in it, but we never used to take benefit of a CSR from that. We're doing it as a general good to the community.
Okay. So we will reach out to the audience in the next 4 or 5 minutes. I have a question for Anna, and probably Patrick can add something to that. Or rather, I look forward to having Patrick add something to that. You see, he has the maximum number of questions for me. So I always try to ask him the maximum number of questions in return.
I see there is a certain dynamic going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And Francis, no problem at all. We are still able to hear you. So if you have a question, please pop it up to me and I'll probably read it if you write to me. So, post COVID, there have been a lot of disruptions in the supply chain. Yeah.
Absolutely.
We have seen some major disruptions in supply chain of various companies, whether they are manufacturing companies or paint companies or any kind of a company. There is so much of disruption in the entire supply chain, and a lot of businesses have gone for a toss, although they might not want to admit it today. But the results, which they will file on the 31st of March, we will get to understand the supply chain has gone for a toss. And building resilience today in the supply chain is an opportunity. Why? Because if corporates usually don't try to mend something if it is not broken. If it is not broken, don't touch it, let it function, because it's a cost. Yeah. And when I was a CEO, for like 10 years, I used to do the same thing, because you need to protect the bonus of your staff. So every penny counts. So every CEO has this pressure. I was under tremendous pressure for bonuses and dividends from my stakeholder. So now on the other side of the table, I still understand. And this company I run, so even today I'm under tremendous pressure to release dividends. Yeah. So my question is, this COVID pandemic is actually a silver lining to build resilience in your supply chain.
Agree 100%.
Yeah. What are you doing about it?
So what I would like to start with is that previously, the supply chain disruptions were only seen by insurance companies in regard to climate change. And if I knew I would be getting so many supply chain questions, I would prepare better. But I remember doing a presentation a couple of months ago. The case was the following. I mean, disregard the details, but automotive industry was having its kind of hotspot production points in Thailand and Taiwan. And X years ago, there was a tsunami that hit severely. All of those Toyota, Hyundai, and so on and so forth had to completely stop the production of their automobiles, even if details were made in Asia, assembled in, say, Germany. Germany wouldn't get those details, and then the customers in, say, US wouldn't get their cars. Insurance companies saw that and progressively worked against them, working on the buffers given the climate change risks. This year we have COVID-19, and supply chains were disrupted as never ever before. I read yesterday a story on the island belonging to the UK, Tristan da Cunha, the most remote island you can imagine. You can only get there by boat. It would take 18 days from Cape Town in South Africa. These people haven't seen vegetables and fruits since March, because the the supply chain was broken because the ships wouldn't pass by anymore, and so on and so forth. And we see the examples of it everywhere. I personally, on the corporate level and industrial level, I see COVID-19 as something definitely positive, because as you said, as long as it's still working more or less, we don't see a problem, we don't get to fix it. Well, this was a huge crisis. This was a huge earthquake, so to say, that showed companies that, the sustainability is the only way to do things. If you don't start doing it today, tomorrow might be too late. If you want to survive as a company, if you want to keep sustaining the community around you and yourself eventually, you have to do things the other way. The more I interview guests from all across the world, across industries on my podcast, the more I ask myself the question, why am I even doing that? Because we're discussing the obvious thing. It should be the only way to do things. Speaking of the resilience in the supply chains, there is this concept. I encourage everyone to look into it. It's called the donut economy. It was born, so to say, by and even implements right now in the city of Amsterdam. The idea is to kind of imagine a donut around the city, and all your supplies, all your materials, imagine you're building something, have to come from a certain range, say 100 kilometers, not to go too much into detail, 100 kilometers around that city. Another example, so this is something to really consider, to rethink, because to change the behavior, we really first of all have to change the thinking. If we all allow ourselves to break the barriers, break the walls in our heads, like, wait, why did I do it this way? Why don't I, shuffle things a little bit and consider some other options, something that is closer to me? Why would I buy something from AliExpress in China if, I don't know, I can recycle something, reuse something, and not buy at all? Maybe, there are options. The example I wanted to give you from one of the guests of my podcast, her name is Cleona Howie Del Rio, and she is responsible, she's working in Climate Geek Spanish chapter. She told me the following. Where she lives in Spain, in a certain village or small town, they had a certain industry production that completely had to stop because there was people couldn't get to work, first of all. They were not protected enough and so on. So they had to stop the production. And yet the sanitizers and the masks were coming from elsewhere. It would take ages. The local government, the municipality, reached out to that factory and said, what is the possibility that you change a little bit your production cycle? We provide you with the PPE, what we have, and we will buy from you. Not only we will allow you to work, we also guarantee that we will buy from you. So the good, the material that was coming from China previously, that stopped coming because of all of the above mentioned conditions, allowed the government, the municipality, and the company to completely rethink their approach and to start implementing this kind of a donut approach. Wow, we have something in our own city. Why does it have to stop? Why do we have to keep buying from elsewhere? CO2 emissions, it will travel. The travel is disrupted. If we can produce this exact thing at home for less cost, for less effort, for less CO2 emissions, and voila, that was a big eureka moment for everyone. So I definitely see a lot of opportunities. Getting back to this Chinese proverb, crisis means an opportunity. And another thing, a proverb that I love a lot, I don't know who it belongs to, which nation or continent. The best time to to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now.
Wow.
Correct. Absolutely. I'll ask Patrick a question on that. But I'll tell you a favorite saying of mine. The Greek philosopher Confucius said, "From confusion comes clarity." So I like a little bit of confusion. it helps you. It helps businesses, and the right people, the right businesses are able to grow.
Definitely.
And I personally think, Patrick, tell me your opinion on this. I think companies are taking advantage of the pandemic to build a stronger supply chain. I'll tell you in CSR language also, or in the commercial language. When companies are losing sales, or when they had to shut down because of this pandemic, if a small company had to sack, let's say, 10 people, to manage equilibrium, they usually sacked 15, and they blamed it on the pandemic, because you can blame it on the pandemic. Yeah. So I think manufacturing companies should use this positively, reach out to newer OEMs, smaller OEMs, with lesser cost of manufacturing, and try and revitalize their balance sheet for the years to come. So Patrick, what is your opinion on this? Are you building a resilience in the supply chain?
Well, I don't know if they're doing that already. I think the problem, if I go back to pre-COVID, I think the big issue was that all these companies had this, I think they called it just-in-time manufacturing. So basically, when people are buying the product somewhere, that is what starts the manufacturing process. So everything is completely streamlined, that there's no extra capacity anywhere. And I think you mentioned that as seen as a big cost. But actually, from this resilience point of view, it's completely wrong way of thinking. Because if you have extra capacity, if you have storage of products, then you have an opportunity when something like this happens. And I think that's where companies completely miss that opportunity of having extra storage, extra capacity, and so on. So I don't know if they're starting to think that way. I think they're thinking more in a risk basis, that if something happens, how do we react to it? And I think that's where you see a lot of companies reacting very well, very quickly, being able to get things from other sources or do it in a different way, as I think Anna gave very good examples of that. But are they really, after COVID stops, are they going to go back and say, we want to have extra capacity at an extra cost? Because that extra cost is actually an opportunity in many different situations. I'm not sure that's the change that's going to happen, but I think that's very interesting to see if they do that.
Yes, absolutely. That would be very interesting to see, because a lot of people I know, a lot of CEOs and boards are looking at setting up supplementary distribution networks, setting up alternate channels, setting up alternate production houses, smaller production. A lot of things. A lot of people are thinking in a lot of different directions. What other ways could they have been doing business at the same cost to avoid the pandemic, or lessen the effect of the pandemic? Yeah. So there are a lot of thoughts on it. So I thought I will ask you this question. I don't have an answer to it, uh, but my job is to ask the right questions. Yeah.
Dr. Seth,
So
sorry to just barge in. I like to point out, especially, apart from the supply chain, I think the need of the hour is to be more responsible towards your stakeholders. And I will just give you one example. As part for my industry and for my company, which I just experienced a few months back. Like, especially post COVID, there are a lot of apprehension among the customers, especially I would say in Asia, where the painting is done by the external painters, not by yourself. You don't paint your own house, rather than in Europe. So, suddenly, so there's a lot of apprehension among the customers that, whether they should allow a person to come into their house, like, because repainting is a major business, again, where a lot of painters are dependent, right? And because we are in the sphere of skill training, we have trained almost 7,000 students in painting. So a lot of alumni, we could say suddenly, they are in a fix, they don't have a job, they don't have employment. So, just to ensure that, we address this gap, we had started a program called AkzoNobel Protect. So as a part of it, we provided PPE kits to the painter. So, providing the safety gear, like how to use a glove or how to use a mask, soft skills, just to teach them how to ensure that, they work in a much safer way. so that the household also feels safe about it, and create awareness about COVID. Because unfortunately, the target group we are talking about, most of them are school dropouts. They're not even properly educated. So a lot of us required, and I think that was really helpful. And we were supported by the Paint and Coating Sector Skill Council, where they also certified the painters, who were again retrained by us and provided the safety kits, and that is really helping them to go back to the business. Right. Like, for example, like, whenever, like, now we need an electrician, I generally call an urban club, rather than I used to earlier call an electrician from my, like, from my neighborhood. Because I know when the urban club guy come, he will ensure all the safety regulations, he will ensure all the safety things, so that I will feel safe in my house. So I think this definitely, that is also, required as a part of the business.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. That's a very valid point. That's a very valid point on the changes that are going to happen. And these changes may seem small, but they are very large changes. An inch of a change now will lead to millions of mile change in the future.
Absolutely.
So something like that. So yes, you are absolutely right. That's a very valid point. I have a question for Ripudaman. Ripudaman, we would like to know, you are a non-polluting company, so you don't really have any governmental pressure, that you need to do this or you need to do this. There are lesser norms for you, let's say, as compared to manufacturing or an oil and gas company. You have a free hand. You don't have, you are not restricted to a corner while doing your CSR. So you have a free hand. So you are very lucky that way, that you get to be the head of CSR for a non-polluting company. Yeah. So how do you really select your focus? And tell us an example of one person's life that you changed because of your CSR. So, that you went to this village or this place and you taught this guy, and now this guy works for you, and how he benefited or how you benefited. I want to know a single kind of a example. Would that be possible?
So I'll just summarize in a way that we chose our focus areas and we kept it very broad. Like you said, that we don't have a very pressure on to decide on what kind of focus area we need to do, because we don't have a certain norms to be followed. But of course, we ensure that the compliances are being followed. And the one thing which the example which I could share is like we did this one big project where we actually upskill the ground staff of the facility management industry, which is the housekeeping, the pantry boys and all. They don't fall directly as our employees. It's just we are part of the real estate ecosystem. And we didn't, so it was an additional cost from the business. We never claimed it. We of course say that it's a project which we're doing it towards a society, but it was an over and above the CSR budget. So we did it as a business cost project where we actually upskill those beneficiaries. We partnered with NSDCs, we provided them the necessary trainings. And right now we felt so good about it because they're not bound just to work for us. They can go out, and once they're trained, they have their certificate, they have that NSDC certification with them. So they can go out and apply it in whichever industry they can, or wherever the need is basically. So that way we think that we are actually bringing a difference in their life. We are not just working or we are not just helping that for our own benefit or our own profit. We are just telling them that this is just, we can help you. You choose your path where you want to take this forward, and there'll be no foundation to it. And even for that matter, they're not bounded to the vendors. Wherever they find a better opportunity, they can go. And we have those testimonials that after that certification, when they have actually stepped forward in their career, if I have to say in that way. And they have also promoted it in a way to, so once, for example, there was a testimonial of a person who belongs to a very remote village, and he has come to a city for a work, and then he got this pantry boy job. And when he got this certification, and he actually enrolled himself into multiple agencies where he could get job, and he actually were able to negotiate for his package because of that certification. He has an upper hand to the one who is less experienced and who doesn't have a proper qualification. And when he talks about this, and he talks about this in his village, So a lot of people actually come back and said that we also want to get trained. We also want to look forward for certain opportunity where we can actually, by getting this kind of skill, we can get job and livelihood for ourselves. So that word of mouth actually help people, a lot of people to get, get self-sustain or get job for themselves. So that's one kind of example. And of course, like I said, our focus areas are very broad. And I mentioned in my previous conversation also with you that we focus on the child welfare, which includes their health as well, their education as well. And then the overall development, if there's something which is required in terms of the skill development. So we ensure that we do it. So that's how we have chosen it. And of course, environment, which is of course the sustainability piece as well. And we ensure that we do our best in terms of our workplaces to ensure that we save energy. And even for the clients, we give them the sustainable measures so that carbon emission is less, the paper wastage is less, the plastic, we say no to the plastic. So all these interventions we keep on doing.
Oh no, that is exactly what I was looking for. When I talk about CSR, I usually say that you should reach out to the communities you serve. And when you said that you reached out to the housekeeping staff, which is not really your employees, they are subcontracted, and you still manage to reach out to them and make a difference to their lives. That is real CSR. That is real CSR. Now, before we go to the audience for a couple of questions, I have one more question for Parthasarathi and Ripudaman. A lot of boards, all my friends feel that the profits will go down in the next 2 years globally because of the pandemic. As a result of which, the CSR budgets will also go down in the next 2 years. That's a general feeling. I really hope not, but that is the general feeling among most CEOs. What are the plans, or what is the action point that both of you have made or would like to suggest to other CSR heads or CSR teams? The average ticket size of the CSR goes down, the focus area changes. How will you continue doing the same amount of good with lesser money or some constraints that the pandemic brings on you? Parthasarathi and Ripudaman.
Yeah, right. So I think the good part is that the CSR budget comes for the average profit of the last 3 years. So that will give us some time. There won't be a drastic reduction in the budget. So that's a saving grace. Saying that, I think it will have a gradual effect, and I can see an effect in the next 3 years. But the best part is that when the pandemic set in, and we also allocated some amount of money to COVID. That point of time only we started this exercise to rebuild the portfolio to ensure that our long-term CSR goals remains the same. So as a company, we have a vision and we have a long-term plan for the CSR. So it's only so we had many plans to scale up certain programs which we won't be doing at this point of time. But the vision, the goals will remain the same. The expansion won't be on a higher side. And of course, we'll also focus on now how to use of more technology, or how to collaborate with governments or with the other corporates to ensure that the budget goes down. And so with a reduced budget, we can create an impact on number of people. So I think partnerships are going to be key in the near future. So most of the corporates need to come together at one platform. Corporates need to work with government, so that there is amalgamation of resources, so that with lesser money we can create more impact. And this is I think one area we are going to focus in the next 3 years.
Yeah, I agree to that. I'll tell you what we are doing from our side. We run the world's largest volunteering platform. So we have 3 million volunteers in India alone. And we have a breakup of that. I'll give you my favorite breakup. I have 275,000 tribal students in the Jalgaon belt. And we talk to a lot of foundations and CSR heads. They're saying the maximum cost an NGO pays is to assimilate the students.
Right.
When your focus is education, then to get 100 students, you spend around 10,000 rupees. And then to train them again, you spend 10,000 rupees. So more than 50% of the cost is to get the students and all. So what we are doing from our side is we are offering our students, the 3 million students, and a million students out of which are first-time learners. So they are really at the bottom of the pyramid. We are offering them to large foundations at zero cost.
Okay.
So large foundations and CSR heads can use our channels
Right.
to reach out to our students, and since we don't have any cost of assimilation of students, we already have 3 million students.
Right.
So we are not charging anything to the corporates. So in effect, what happens is we are reducing your cost by 50%. So
Absolutely.
that is what
Yeah,
we are
yeah.
doing from our side.
Right.
So
That's
every
great.
bit helps. Every bit helps.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely. Yeah.
50% is big. It's a big amount to
Absolutely.
save.
Absolutely. Every paisa counts.
Correct.
Right.
Absolutely. So that brings us to the end of the first seminar of the second season of In Conversation With. Last season we had around 50 speakers. In October, this is the first seminar. We have planned 6 more seminars with 35 speakers from across the world. So that brings us to the end of this seminar. We have 3 minutes to go. Ripudaman, I wanted your opinion on that last question, and then the audience, please feel free to ask questions.
So of course, considering the budget's gonna change, there will be impact. I'm not saying that it'll not be, and it's not just for one organization. It'll be for a lot of organizations who actually used to contribute to this pool and now might not be contributing in the future. But I think it's the important is how we are able to at least sustain the existing initiatives and not just pull out the funds or pull out the projects so that we are not there's a full stoppage to a project. So I think that's the main point where we should focus on, that at least not upskilling, but at least try to maintain a certain systematic approach where we are sustaining that existing project itself. So that's what my point of view is. And till now, like I initially also said, that this very important, we should keep that buffer. And I think everybody, when they plan their budgets, we keep that buffer to, in case we wanted to upskill a project, there has to be certain amount. In case we wanted to expand the horizon of, or the focus area of the project, so there has to be amount. So I think those buffers will actually help in this scenario when the budget's gonna cut down, and every organization should have or use that buffer amount to sustain their existing projects. So that's my point here.
No, absolutely well taken. Well taken on that, because you're saying your CSR chain is already resilient. The way Anna and Patrick are trying to build a resilient supply chain. So, we take that point that you have a resilient CSR chain, and you will be able to absorb the shocks because you have built a buffer. So, yes, that is true. Hayden, would you like to have a question or a comment, please? We were very excited that you decided to join us. If you have a question, we would be happy.
Again, there's been a lot of very interesting and relevant discussion on CSR, and in particular the impact on the supply chain. I just wanted to sort of turn the discussion to the financial sector, because as you know, I'm a career banker and a regulator now, and wanted to get some feedback on the possible impact of the financial sector, the banking industry in particular, in the event that, especially in the current environment, the lending requirements start to focus on sustainability to a large extent, and sort of impose, from a financial perspective, on corporates, certain sustainability requirements, and whether that would serve to further the rate of development of sustainable policies and so on. I just wanted to get the panel's feedback on that.
Yeah, absolutely, Hayden. I come from a financial background. I have been a CEO of a bank for many years, and I completely agree with you. It is at a point where it is, we really don't have all the answers. I have a lot of questions for you, Hayden. I really look forward to your participation in the roundtable. Because I have been a banker for 20 years now, and I totally agree with you that there is a lot which depends on the financial sector, right? And on the sustainability side, the financial sector, there is a lot that depends. We probably don't have the answers. Every government is trying in a very different way. I understand the US is investing $1.9 trillion into the local economy to increasing the spending power. So everybody on his own kind of a thing, you know. Yes.
So that's happening across the board. I mean, to a larger or to a lesser extent. When I focus on the banking sector, but I'm talking about the capital markets as a whole. As you know, for instance, the capital markets has evolved, of course, to the extent where sustainable financing is a growth area. There are investors who are particularly interested in and would only invest in projects that progress the sustainable program.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of very encouraging and interesting evolution of the capital markets. So traditional banking has been a little, I would say, a little slower in terms of that evolution. But I would argue that the impact, if sustainability were more central to the whole approach of credit evaluation and project evaluation from a financing perspective, I think that would go a long way in advancing all that we've discussed this morning.
Can
Well,
I add
absolutely.
two words on the financial sectors? I believe this is already happening, at least in Ukraine. If you have an investment project, you are a company, you want to build whatever, say a wind farm or a residential complex. And if you're looking for loans and you're asking for money from the international financial institutions such as European Investment Bank or European EBRD, European Bank on Reconstruction and Development, or PEAC in the US. There they have the requirement to follow, to the very least extent, IFC performance standards and the bank's own policies on environmental and social responsibility. So, for example, from the experience when I was working at the bank and I was developing this environmental and social management system internally to be able, for the bank to be able to assess these various investment projects, we had a Danish company come in to us and say, please help us do it to the best possible environmental and social standards, because the last thing we want to see, reputation here comes into play, is that a Danish company kills birds in Ukraine. So not only the financial risks are in play, but also the reputational, and they are taken very seriously. I encourage everyone to look into IFC performance standards. There are 8 of them. They're very universal, regardless where you are developing your project, in Egypt, Pakistan, Ukraine, or the US. Anywhere they are very well organized. Hello. Well organized and applicable in every industry. But then there are, of course, industry-specific guidelines that really help to develop projects in the most sustainable way, so that everybody is in peace, the communities, the shareholders, the stakeholders in the broader sense, and the environment, of course.
Correct. See, I'll tell you, Arbit, what we are doing. I'm in the middle of setting up an ESG exchange. So we are partnering with somebody from Silicon Valley. We are partnering with a lot of people from across the world, and we are still looking at newer partners. So CASI is in the middle of setting up an ESG exchange, and there are 4 ESG exchanges in the world, and the one at London seems to be working fine, but they have only 12 members. So, we are trying to set it up, but there are a lot of inherent challenges in impact. The last month we had three speakers actually. One was an advisor to the long-term stock exchange in US. One was, a fund manager of a large mutual fund, an impact fund, and the third was the ESG head of a fund. So we had three speakers on impact, and again we have a panel where Hayden will be speaking. So we'll again have a lot of questions on finance. But yes, we are trying to set up an ESG exchange, and we'll be releasing the notes shortly to all the speakers and friends. We are happy if you participate. It is high time that we do something on impact funds. It is really high time that impact investments percolates down the line and does not remain as a part of the elite investments. So multinationals and lead certified is all okay. But I would really like to see impact investments flow down to the bottom of the pyramid, the bottom of the food chain, so that we have smaller, offshoots of small businesses across villages and towns, and they are all sustainable. And that needs impact investors to look down deeper. But that's a dream. I am working on that. With that, we come to the end of this session. If the audience has a question, now would be the time. So, Vanshika, you had a question?
Yeah. Hello, sir, and hello to everyone on the panel. I'm Vanshika, and I would like to say that this has been so interesting and there's so much I've taken away. Thank you for that. My question is to Anna, ma'am. Ma'am, I wanted to ask, request you if you could shed some light on how companies could look at reducing costs while simultaneously reducing their, environmental footprint. So, if you could share your 2 cents on that, ma'am.
Yeah, sure. The connection is breaking, so I will reply based on what I heard and what I understood in the parts of this question. In my work, I'm building the solid and sound environmental and social management systems. What it means in practical terms. It means that I'm using this above mentioned IFC standards, the standards of the International Finance Corporation, that is one of the 5 branches of the World Bank, that is basically working on bridging the gap between developed countries and developing countries in terms of their development, economic development. Then into play comes International Labour Organization standards, sometimes the World Health Organization standards, and so on. So how does it work and how it can help companies on the long run? What I do, first I come and I assess how company is doing the things at the moment, and then I break it down into 3 categories. The environment, that is broken into 2, inside of the project and outside of the project. Environment inside of the project is basically the good household practices. Where is our water coming from? Do we have all the documents on that? Where our water discharge is going to? Do we have all the documents? If you have the project that is built in the open field, so to say, you have to have the portable toilets. What is the company that is coming to extract the wastewater from there? That's the word. What's going on with waste? There you break it down into household waste, hazardous waste, and so on and so forth. And again, you look into who would be the waste carrier and whether these people have the appropriate license to deal with hazardous waste, for example. Then you look into the soil, you look into the materials. If you have any use of oil or fuels, you have to be extremely careful with these materials not leaking into the soil. So this is kind of an internal environment inside of the project area of the site. Environment externally, so outside of the fence of that project, is, let's look at it broader, biodiversity. If you're building a wind farm, special emphasis on birds and bats. Other mammals as well, but less focus. If you're building a road, what kind of maybe crossings of the animals you're crossing with that road while it's being constructed. So that's the environment part. Then you have the community part as well, broken down into two. Workers inside of the project and bigger community outside of the fence of the project. Whether you will have dust, transportation, noise, and so on and so forth, it's in your company's best interest to engage your stakeholders externally as early and as extensively and intensively as possible, because when people are simply aware and when they feel heard, they feel more relaxed, they feel like they play a part, they feel like they matter, and they are more accepting of any changes in their community. And this is just like one tiny part of what you can do with the community. Internally, speaking of the workers, do they have enough potable water per person per time of the year? This is also something that we find in the International Labour Organization standards. Do they know how to complain? So the grievance mechanism. Do they feel safe and secure? Are they in the possession of their own documents? You know, sometimes it can happen that the employer keeps the passports of the employees, yeah. But this is literally the definition of human trafficking and modern slavery. This should not happen. One of the, depends where in the world you are, not only you, but everyone who's listening to us, child labor, forbidden in most parts of the world, can happen somewhere. So if the money is coming from, or if your company wants to correspond to the best available practice, this should not be the case. So child labor and forced labor cannot be present on site. This is like regarding workers' rights, security has to follow certain procedure and so on. So, and then the third part, the one that I didn't touch, but it's a big part on occupational health and safety. Everything has to happen safely, secure. Workers have to have the appropriate PPE, to say the least. Now with COVID, we also introduced enormous amounts on every corner of sanitizers, masks, and everything. Please keep the social distancing where possible. On the construction site, might not be the case. So you have these three big pillars, two of them broken down into internal and external. How do you reduce costs and how do you benefit from investing a little bit more in the setting up of these correct systems? First, you don't have any more legal problems. Anytime the inspector, environment, labor, anyone else comes, everything is transparent, everything is clear. You save your time, the time of the inspector, you save the time of everyone and the cost of your company. Also corruption, never forget about the corruption. You completely kill the opportunity for the corruption. If you deal with waste in the right manner, whatever it can be, solid or liquid, you save everyone the time, money, and effort. I am given a hint that we have less than 1 minute to wrap up. So I'm ready to chat outside of this session. Shoot me a message, follow the podcast Sustainability Explored, and this is the end for me. I'm sorry.
That was a good answer. I just have one announcement, before we reach the end. Francis has been on the show. Francis is a good friend and he's a very strong supporter of sustainability. Unfortunately, his video is not working. So he sent me an answer to, what are the changes post-COVID. So he says a corporate's primary responsibility towards generating profitability on a sustainable long-term manner. In achieving this, the corporates need to work on value and trust. So there are three things which Francis says is important: planet, people, and profits. And in the current COVID environment, the social aspects have to come to the fore. That is the company showing care and concern for the safety and well-being of its employees in area of health and ability to continue to support them financially is the number one priority which a company should have at this point in time within the COVID pandemic. So that is the opinion of Francis. I will be introducing all of you later. Once we finish this. So if you have any challenges, if you have any questions, you can take it one-to-one with Francis. Yeah. So thank you very much, all of you, for being here today. As I said, the end of the first episode for season 2, in conversation with CASI Knowledge New York series. Thank you very much, Anna, Parthasarathi, Ripudaman, Patrick, Vanshika, everyone. Hayden, thank you very much for being here, sir. Francis, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Right.